Hey guys, how's it going? It's Soundkiller, and today we're gonna be making this. So without talking much longer, let's go into our DAW and get started with this tutorial. So to start off, of course, I always love to start with the drums. So I'm gonna go here into my favorite samples and I'm gonna load up the Black Lotus Audio Horizon drums. These have been my go-to drums ever since they released, and I've done so many tracks and so many releases using Horizon dubstep drums because they're truly one of the best high quality dubstep drums packs. Something neat that was added in FL Studio on the more recent versions is that you can lower the volume here, so you don't have to route this into a channel just to adjust the volume. And I like to use this crash technique here just to sort of fill up the mix a little bit. I can always highlight them all together and lower the volume a bit. And this really gives life to the drop. Now, I like to use the pre-made loops inside of Horizon for the hi-hat. Something fast to give it a nice little energy. And now I'm gonna add a ride just to fill up the empty bar. This one sounds very classic, so it's a very nice little. So now let's route all of these channels to a track here, and let's create a drum bus here. And mix this a little bit. So I'm gonna give you some really awesome tips and tricks for mixing drums here. So I know the ride is a little bit too loud for my taste. And I want to sort of clean up a little bit the hi-hat loop here. So I'm going to create this very, very shallow curve. I'm gonna add a very, very, very subtle amount of reverb to this, and we can do it in different ways. So I'm gonna show you a really more advanced technique, and I'm gonna route these into a channel here, and we're gonna call this hat bus. And I'm gonna add a very, very little amount of reverb. And it sounds really good, so now I'm going to turn it down to around 7%, somewhere around there. And if we want to make it more energetic, we can add a shaper box or a volume shaper. And we can create a curve like this. And we can have it go around 1/8. Or maybe faster. It sounds a little bit weird, and let's try it out instead in the actual hi-hat loop because it might sound better there, depending on how sharp you want. Again, let's route this to our drum bus, and let's call this drums. And I honestly think that sounds really awesome. So now that we have that, we can now add some ambience, and I'm gonna use a nice little pad for a background ambience. So let's see. This one's one of my favorite pads that I've done so far. If you guys are wondering, yes, this is a real analog pad that I did, and I can make a tutorial in the future if you guys want to see how to create a really awesome, beautiful analog pad using analog hardware. I have my mini log here, so if you guys are interested in learning how to do that, just comment down below if that's what you want to see next. So to start mixing everything together, I want to take my pad here and I want to make sure that I don't have any low end. And again, while doing this, I want to have a very, very shallow curve so it barely messes the phase of it, elements of the sound. Because the shallower and the less aggressive the curve is, the less phase distortion or phasing happens here. And so that allows you to have more CPU power because you don't have to use a linear phase EQ, instead you can just do that trick. So now let's go into the fun part and let's start sound designing, creating some really awesome basses. And before actually making the basses, I want to create a pattern here to sort of imagine and visualize what my drop is going to sound like. And I think I'm going to have a few basses, so I'm going to have this first shot be a growl. I'm going to have this be a second bass here and then third bass here. And so we can definitely divide it into those basses. So let's remove these, let's send it to the empty channel here so that we can see the pattern. Now here, and I'm gonna start with this bass here. And I know I want it to be a very, very detuned, very FM sounding bass. So I'm gonna crank up and do. And I can definitely go here and let's see. I'm gonna use a virtual wavetable. Because there's some really awesome FM wavetables here. Now let's give it some vowel tone here using the high notch filter. You can add a little bit of more movement here by using a second LFO. We can create a third LFO here. You can create a second oscillator here, and then FMth. We can add the voices, the detune, and a really nice trick to have an even dispersion for the detuning for the unison voices is just turning them all the way down, cranking them all the way up here in the macro, and then just using a macro as a detune knob. I'm gonna add also some white noise here just to really subtly fill up the high end a little bit. I'm gonna add some OTT here inside of Serum. I'm gonna add some extra modulation here. So we can use a filter, or we can use a filter for something else and instead use the EQ like this. And now what we can do with the filter is that instead we can use a calm filter, so like the negative calm filter, for example, to give it a more tonal sound. Now to give it some detune, we can go here and I can add a flanger here. We can add some hyper dimension. And we can add some chorus as well, and the chorus is my favorite one because I'm going to show you a really awesome trick here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down the depth. And this is giving it a really awesome tone. We can add some distortion after this. We can route the sub directly out. And this can actually be the starter bass instead of. And we can actually clone this bass because this bass actually sounds really awesome. We can just. And then instead of having this bass here, we can add the growl there. So now we can duplicate this one more. Make it really, really fast. And so now I'm gonna do is, because this is a very high-end bass, so it's very focused in the high mids area. We don't have a lot of low end, and that's where I'm gonna grow here. I'm gonna create a really low bass. That sounds awesome. We can add a second spectral here and keep this one mono, and I think that the trilobites sound are very good. Let's see. So let's use actually this one sounds really awesome. And so what I'm doing now with the two peaks here is that I'm creating a very vowel tone. And again, I want to do the same as I did with the first bass, and is to have a very insane amount of detuning. And this one I'm gonna not use the chorus. And what's gonna make this bass very special is again doing a trick here. And now we're gonna layer this on top of this. And so now let's route all of these basses into our bass bus here. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually remove the low end of these three basses, and since these three are the same, I'm gonna route them all to the same mixer track. I'm gonna call this main bass. I'm gonna call this one filler bass. And so let's start doing a little bit of mixing here. And so before I actually start working with these, let's just start mixing it up a little bit. Route to this track, route to this track. And so I'm gonna start adding a little bit of more volume to this. So what I really like to do here in my bass bus here, and this is my go-to bass bus for always, is using the OTT at 30%, so it's very subtle, it's not very aggressive. I then like to add a Pro Q3, and the reason I use Pro Q3 is because I can set it to the side here and just cut out the low end to around 200 Hertz, so that's mono. And what this is doing, it's keeping everything on the side information, which is a stereo, and then cutting everything on the sides here on the low end, so it's making it mono. I then like to add a Maximus, and the reason I use Maximus first is because it's a fantastic plugin. I'm gonna set it to default so that you guys can see what I use Maximus for. And so what I like to do is I like to disable all of the bands, so I only use a master compressor, and I'm setting it like this so it's a linear curve so that it's not compressing anything, because instead I like to use a saturator inside of Maximus. I like to set it to 1% here and 0.1 here, so it's clipping, and then add gain using it as a soft clipper. You can always use a soft clipper instead of this Maximus trick, but I really like the sound that Maximus gives it. Gives it a nice soft crunchy sound. And of course, there's a few things that we need, but first I want to start actually doing some more advanced sound design here. So I'm going to add some post-processing on our main bass. Something very awesome to do before. So as you guys saw, we added this curve here to remove some of the low end. But if we add some distortion before that, it's gonna completely affect and completely alter our sound. And now we can add a frequency shifter, and a really good free frequency shifter that you can use is the kilohertz frequency shifter. And around 40 hertz to start. It's a very subtle difference, but it's a very nice difference. And so now we can start squishing everything back together by adding some more OTT. We can add some tonal delay by using a very good tonal delay plugin is actually the Delay 3. So we can go here into the default. And we can have this before the OTT. And we can add a tail to this bass by using the Fruity Reverb too. And I'm going to show you this really awesome trick. So I'm going to go here again to the default. I'm going to really crank up the pre-delay. But first I need to take down the size and the decay and set the pre-delay to around 100 Hz. And this is going to sort of work like a slap back delay. I'm going to have it to like very, very little, like 4%, something like that. We can add more high end, we can cut the low end. And so if we listen to the bass individually, and we take the reverb all the way to the top so that everything is boosting that reverb, it's creating that really awesome tail on the bass. So 2% I think it's good. And now we're gonna do the same thing that we did on our main bass to here on the low bass. And I want to listen to that. And so I know I want to clean up this bass a little bit because I hear a lot of information in the low mid that I don't want. So what I can do is I can go very crazy and create a notch here like that. We can sort of play around and see how it sounds without this. I like that's how it sounds a lot better. And so now let's add some distortion because that's one of the most important parts in this filler bass. Let's add some more EQ here. You can have the EQ before the OTT. Let's clean it up a little bit more. Some more OTT. And I think I don't want low end on this bass either. And what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to create a separate sub for this. And so I'm going to use 3x oscillator just to have the best CPU performance possible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the oscillator 3 mix all the way up. I'm going to set it to 24 semitones down. And I'm going to follow the filler bass pattern here. So I'm just going to create a pattern like this. And create a nice little cut like this. And to remove a little bit of the click that subs usually have, I really like to add a very subtle amount of attack and release. And this really softens the click. Now we can go here, and while holding our notes, just move the scroll wheel up to increase the velocity so it sounds louder. And so now something that's very noticeable that's missing is our sidechain. So I'm going to create a sidechain channel here. I'm going to send it all the way to the front. And I'm going to use this nice little patcher preset that I have here created by a friend of mine. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to load up patcher real quick. And load up here. Before I do that, I need to do a process before, so I need to have a channel here, sidechain to this track only, have our bass bus and sub routed into our sidechain. Now that everything is set up, we can now go here, use the Sebastian chain, and what this is doing is taking an audio trigger, which is going to be our channel number 2 here once I create it, and is triggering a MIDI signal into our shaper box, which is then triggering the sidechain curve. And this is done as a sort of hack with the PDC because the FL Studio PDC, or the plugin delay compensation, is very bad. It sort of creates audio gaps that are very noticeable. And so I already have here a sidechain click created, so now I'm going to route this into track number 2, and we can use our kick and snare pattern to also add the sidechain. And so now I want to add some more volume into my kick and snare, so again I'm going to raise the velocity here on both of these channels. I'm going to add a little bit of post-processing in the drums. And something that's very good to really fill up and really make some very big drums is using parallel processing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this glue compressor here. I'm going to crank the threshold all the way up and do something very crazy, very aggressive. I'm going to keep the attack very high so that I have aggressive click. I'm going to have the release all the way down. And now I'm going to take the makeup all the way up. And now take the dry wet signal here. And there we go. And now we can create our growl sound to sort of create that pattern breaker. So our growl is going to be very simple. Again, I'm going to use a trilobite here. And I'm going to add the So now I'm going to create this really awesome growl. I'm going to create this sub here without being directed out because it's giving a nice little crunch. And we can take the random all the way down and set the phase to the start. Or keep it in the middle. So that every time we play a note, it sounds exactly the same. I'm going to add a flanger here, and this is going to be a phaser. I'm now going to add a pitch curve here. It's going to use LFO number 2. I'm going to set the global to master tune. I'm going to set it to 2 semitones. can use maybe 5 semitones. I think that's gonna be a very more aggressive. And have it be a lot slower. Again, I'm gonna route it to a track here. I'm gonna add some more phaser and distortion just to really give it that growl tone. And so I'm gonna, instead of giving it all that movement, I wanna have I'm a bit confused on why this is behaving the way it is. I'm not gonna question it, but I am very confused as that's not the normal Serum behavior. Ah, that sounds a lot more growlish. I'm gonna remove these two basses so that they don't conflict. Let's add a second voice here to that growl. Oh, that growl sounds so meaty, so good, so awesome. And now what we can do is create a second growl here using that first growl. And not have it do that pitch bend so aggressive. And let's reset all of these. Let's remove the it's gonna sound so crunchy, so and since now it's a fast growl, instead of having that up down movements, let's just keep it. And now we can have a second bass here. And we can create a very cool screechy bass. And I'm gonna use a unreleased wavetable. And so this is gonna be a wavetable for an upcoming pack by Black Lotus Audio. So now I'm gonna create this pitch bend here. And since I moved it, now I can just right click here, create automation clip. And we can sort of create this curve like that. Perfect. And you can create it a more crazy by something. And I want to have sort of a attack. Maybe you can create it here in the actual pack. And we're very detuned. And we can add some extra harmonics here by using some more FM. I think a 7th would work perfectly. And since we want that bass to not have low end at all, let's again use this EQ curve. Now let's master this real quick, and I'm gonna use Ozone 11. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add a few modules. So I wanna add the equalizer, I wanna add some dynamic, I wanna add a imager, and I wanna add a maximizer. And so here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a mid-side EQ here. I'm gonna sort of dip the mids around here. I'm gonna go to the side and I'm gonna really get aggressive here. Yeah, something like that. I'm gonna add a little bit of high end on the sides. I'm gonna add some dynamics here. Let's add a few bands here. So around 300 should work nicely. 10K, around 2.5, 3 maybe, something like that. Let's set it to all so I can see them all. Something like 6.4, 6.3.4, 6 should work very nicely. And I accidentally set this on the limiter instead of the compressor. Should be on the compressor instead. I'm gonna take down a lot of the low end image here. Let's add again some bands. I wish Ozone 11 already came with the bands installed in the presets, like I didn't have to add them in, because you obviously have these knobs here, so you can create something crazy like this. And now it's gonna get really crazy. I like to use IRC3 and go 6 dB ups, so it sounds very crunchy, very loud. So now I'm gonna take down the crashes because I can hear a lot of the cymbals inside of the drop. And this drop is sounding super fire, sounding super amazing. And then we can add a third switch up, but I'm gonna leave that up to you guys, so you guys can get creative and create a really awesome drop after following this tutorial. But on that second flip, we can add it like something like going pop 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 or something like that. And this is pretty much it on how you can create a dubstep drop here in FL Studio using Serum. It's very easy once you start sound designing, once you start processing your basses, to have them everything glued together and sound very nice, very together, very loud. And it's even easier once you start using the tools that Black Lotus Audio provides. So you can check out Horizon Dubstep drums if you need some really aggressive and really amazing sounding drums. You can check out Virtual for Serum if you want some really awesome wavetables and presets to create some dubstep drops. And Black Lotus Audio pretty much has everything you need to get started with creating some really awesome dubstep bangers. So a huge shout out to Black Lotus Audio for sponsoring this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so that I know you guys enjoy the content. And while you're at it, comment down below what you want to see next. As always, this was Soundkiller, and I'll see you in the next one.